Hello, and welcome to the Original Remake Podcast, a show where we take the role of Hollywood executives, shamelessly exploiting your nostalgia for money. My name is Pat, and I'm joined by Amy,
Hello.
Andrea,
Hello.
and Nick.
Oh, hi.
And today we'll be discussing the 1995 film Hackers. All right, so Nick, this is your pick, and I just want to say up front, I hadn't seen the movie before we selected it.
I had not either.
Okay, right off the bat, there's two ways to view this movie. One is you watched it in the 90s or late 90s, and you're watching it from that point of view, and the other one is you're watching it now with what we know about the future of the internet and social media and everything that represents for this film. So, Nick, why don't you take us away and talk about kind of why you selected this movie, and did you see the movie when you were younger, and kind of what did you think about it back then, and what do you think about it now?
So this was actually a pretty tough choice for me. I kind of went through my media library and just clicked on things I hadn't either seen in a while or hadn't seen since I loaded it up onto my Plex server. We went through, and Time Cop ended up being the recently played, and Hackers I knew we kind of just threw on the list earlier. I'm like, yes, let's revisit that. That's going to happen. Went back through it, and that made the pick for this week. Although Time Cop was a very close second.
That movie looked horrible.
It's fantastic.
I've never seen it.
We may visit it in a future episode. We might have to. But yeah, so Hackers is a movie that came out in 1995. It's listed as an American crime thriller. Not sure how I really relate that. Loose definition. I suppose it could fall into that category, but it doesn't strictly follow.
There's a bunch of like 90s IT thriller movies that are not classed as cyberpunk yet.
I see.
And
like
this feels like one of them.
Okay. I guess it could kind of fall into that category then. But really, it's a bunch of high school kids that get dragged into this like corporate extortion scheme by this character, Eugene, or the Plague, making this crazy virus that steals little bits of money, a la Swordfish, for those who've seen that movie. The classic story of the computer tech literate high school kids rising up to power and overthrowing the corporate machine is kind of where this movie goes from there. I loved it. It's possibly one of the movies that inspired me to get into computers in the first place, and I've turned that into a career, so I definitely have some nostalgia value for this movie. But yeah, I love it. It's a great pick.
Andrea and I haven't seen it. Amy, you saw the film.
Yeah, I saw when I was growing up around the same age as Nick. I just remember just looking back, rewatching it, thinking this is 90s. The clothes, the music. I'm not that really into computers, but I know that it was the age of where everyone was talking about hacking, and everyone was getting internet at their house. And
oh yeah, I still remember putting a keylog on my parents' computer so I could steal my mother's parental control AOL dial-up
Oh my
passwords.
goodness.
Yes.
This movie gave me real strong anarchist cookbook vibes.
Oh, sure. That was absolutely part of it. I mean, think back to our high school days, and we're probably dating ourselves a little bit here, but like that was the thing.
I mean, not for me and people that I spent time with.
So I was the kid in private school with a class size of like 28, where anything we could do to upset our nun type teachers was a big win for you, popularity wise, in class. So the anarchist cookbook on a 3.5-inch floppy was a major status symbol back then.
Yeah, he learned to use computers and he worships Satan, so it's like the best of both worlds.
I mean, it's funny because like the anarchist cookbook is mostly just about freaking, which is basically phone hacking.
Oh, there's a lot more in there, like how to make napalm and stuff like that. But like
how to make napalm, how to, do all kinds of weird stuff.
And today we just call it YouTube.
I mean, yeah.
But yeah, so this movie, when it came out, only had a only had a theatrical release of about 2 weeks. It grossed like $11 million. It ended up being a pretty big loss for the studio. It wasn't until it hit VHS that word of mouth really kind of took off for this movie and turned it into a cult classic.
Now, kids, VHS.
Much like the
Yes.
cassette.
Yes.
Is another one of those tape
It's a
forms
bigger
of
tape.
media that we used to use.
Actual film.
You mean they printed the internet? What?
What?
There is one thing, you know, so far as like nostalgia goes, is like, and again, we'll age ourselves here, but I remember like the biggest thing was when they got rid of floppies and they went to like the thicker floppies. What were they called? The
Zip discs.
Zip discs.
Yeah.
I remember that was like, wow, look at these giant floppy disks now.
Yep.
Like, you know what I mean? And
But man, you went from 1.44 megabytes on your 3 1/4 or 3.5 inch floppy down all the way up to 150 megabytes on your zip disk.
yeah.
Exactly.
Kids are learning what the save button actually is supposed to represent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, look at a save button, kids. You're in Microsoft Word, hit that save button. It looks like a floppy disk.
Yeah. But there
Welcome
is
to my age.
and listen, the movie's in the 90s, so I'm not super mad at it, but like the hacking scenes, like at some point, like mathematical formulas just start
Yeah.
floating at the guy's face.
And
And
just
I was
like,
like, this is so dumb.
Okay,
It really
I-
is.
I
All of the
appreciate it,
CG, all of the CG, like, okay, as someone who currently has a career in IT, and you could call some of what I do hacking in 1995 terms, but if you saw what my screen looked like while I was digging into some network infrastructure, you'd be bored out of your skull, and you can't put that on a theatrical screen.
You sure
So
can't.
you have to put something there, and you have to jazz it up. And if you could suspend your disbelief for a moment and just accept that that is really just a command prompt of you typing your command line, one command at a time, IP address this, and so on and so forth, you translate any of that CG nonsense into that in your mind and be kind of thankful that you've got some floaty equations to look at and not trace route 192 dot.
That's
cosmic
fair.
equations.
Yeah, that's fair.
Oh.
But I mean, you've mentioned here that some of the actual hacking, not the visuals of it, is very true to life and like basically still kind of some of the biggest like risks today. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I was honestly surprised. Big part of my daily job is worrying about cybersecurity and social engineering and the implications in like a healthcare environment of someone getting their email or passwords compromised. And the number one threat still today is social engineering. This movie opens with the main character calling into a security guard saying, "Hey man," pretends to be guy at company, "I really got to get this report for Mr. Kawasaki," I think he says.
Yeah.
Just read me the numbers on this box. It should have all these blinky lights. It's right on top of your computer. And he's talking about the modem and he's talking about the phone number. And back then, before the true internet, your computer had to dial up, and ad hoc networks were a thing before your home internet and your VPNs and work from home. Your computer had to dial a work computer to get connected to the mainframe at work before you can actually do any of your calculation tasks or otherwise.
Did the mainframe have a back door?
Oh God. I guess you could call this backdooring the mainframe.
Oh, God.
In today's terminology, if you got a phishing email that made you click a link and enter your username and password, that is essentially what this kid did over the phone, asking the security guard to say, "What are these numbers on this box?" and connected into this network. And it was surprising that they had that level of accuracy in a movie when they really didn't need to. And later on, they have this geek out moment where they interrupted Kate Libby or Acid Burns' sexy moment with her boy toy to geek out about a laptop. And I have absolutely had that moment. Oh my God, nothing else matters. Check out this new computer with this much memory and this
Are
kind
you
of
sure you
CPU.
want to admit that to the world right now?
Yeah.
Check out all the spinny colors on the monitor. Whoa.
So if I have a
Looks with the
criticism,
lights off.
yeah, that scene bothered me more, and actually any scene where they're looking at the computer screen and you have that typing montage, those bothered me more than the CG.
The thing that most annoyed me about the hacking isn't the equations floating in the air or the weird colors or like Cookie Monster like being on the screen or whatever. It was how slow all the hackers typed. I was like, I don't believe you. This is taking way longer, right? Like,
and they even called that out in one scene. Kate Libby, Angelina Jolie's character, says to the other main character, Dade Murphy, played by Johnny Lee Miller. She says to him, "I hope you don't fuck like you text."
yeah, that's right. Yeah. Johnny Lee Miller, very punchable. I want to punch him in his
Yes.
face every time I see him.
A very punchable looking
Why
doofus.
don't I feel that? I don't really.
Every time he was on screen, I was like, God, how are you a leading man? It's like what's his name? Stuart Townsend.
He's
Like he had a bunch of like leading roles in like the early 2000s. I was like, why? Who picked you? Why did they pick you?
Now, is that in his American accent or his actual accent? Where is he?
It's just
Isn't he
his
Scottish?
face. It's his face.
What is he?
Johnny Lee Miller can go into the Chris Pratt category of like, stay the comic relief and get out of my movies.
I don't think he's that punchable.
I kind of agree with Pat on this one. At least we know where the real Slim Shady got his whole.
For real, yeah.
Washed out look.
And also, so this
Oh, he's British.
they cast this guy, and then they make Angelina Jolie look ugly in this movie, which is an accomplishment. With her
I don't think
weird-ass
she looks
haircuts.
ugly.
So she has
That was
short hair.
That was one
No.
thing that I really thought was interesting in this movie because she actually looked like a high schooler.
I was gonna say they may
Yeah.
have tried to make her look younger.
Well,
She
this
Like,
was,
she
this was like her first
No.
role, though, I think, or one of her first roles.
It was like
so-
one of her first
It
roles.
was her
Yeah.
second role, her first real role where she got recognized. Her first role was like this, not even B-level movie that just bombed even harder.
Okay.
I don't recall the name of it.
But apparently they were married for 4 years, Johnny Miller and her,
No kidding.
and they met on the set of this movie. So
So another fun bit of information about the startup with this movie. The director, Ian Softly, actually made the cast hang out together and go to hacker conventions to learn the terminology and how people behaved. Like, we're talking about in the mid 90s, some kind of anxious, introverted, neckbeardy types, speaking as one of them.
Aw.
Absolutely was. Like,
hey,
I'm-
your
I'm
neck
being
beard
brutal.
stretches all the way up into your face. Don't you worry, bud.
No, they were rough times those high school years, but like they actually did a little bit of real research and got in there into the thick of it, and that's, I think, what kind of sells some of the terminology. Although one term that they use, saying the hackers, no, this guy is elite. I'm like,
Oh
no,
God.
no.
Even I knew that was
It's leet, as in 1337 hacker leet speak. Leet, not elite. I I think I had an aneurysm every time someone said that, but I digress.
Okay, so the movie, listen, there's a lot here to like when it comes to like the early 90s or the mid 90s, what the internet was actually like. And again, it's kind of like our generation, get off my lawn, yell at clouds. It was a beautiful time before the reality of like, there's like three internets. There's the 90s dial-up internet where like your dad's shouting at you to get off the game you're playing online so we can use the phone. Then there's the crash, the IT
the
crash.
bubble bursting.
Yeah.
The Yahoo bubble.
And then we go right into social media networks come along and ruin everything and make the last decade and a half really, really sad for everyone.
Don't forget about my GeoCities, okay?
Oh, excuse me. I'm counting that as part of the fresh, the 90s internet.
Okay.
So the 90s, listen, the clothing in this movie is perfect. I look at like some of the clothes I had when I was like young. I'm like, I'd fit right in.
Sadly, yes.
yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
I
the
would too.
music, the clothing, everything here is like full on nostalgia, like perfect 90s.
Listen, if you didn't like this movie, you better have liked the soundtrack. The soundtrack for this movie, most normal movies have one album, and back when this came out, one CD, one cassette for a soundtrack. This had 3. It had
Really?
a lot of good music in it.
It had 3
It had 3
cassette tapes.
3 cassettes or CDs.
Wow.
When it came out.
Kids, a cassette tape is this plastic rectangle that had literal tape or ribbon in it, and you used to put it in this machine, and you'd hit play,
Oh my
and
God,
the
really?
wheels would turn, and then it would play that tape inside. It was very cool, children.
Like that old timey stuff from Apollo 13.
Yeah.
And you could record your own off the radio.
Oh, that was my
Right?
favorite.
You remember
will
mixtape
record the
CDs,
radio.
guys?
I do.
I will say the 90s was a golden era of film soundtracks.
Yes, it was. I have many a film soundtrack in my CD collection, which I still have.
Gated reverb for the win.
Yeah. Space Jam, The Matrix, some great soundtracks.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
All right, I'll put that
Space
in.
Jam?
I had the Space Jam cassette and it was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Fight me.
I will not.
Fight me.
Fly like an eagle.
Oh my God. Yeah. Those are,
I believe I can fly.
that's the way I like it. Basketball Jones. Oh my God. Dude, I remember that.
Turn to you. That's the way I like it. The Winner by Coolio.
I believe I could fly. Oh
R.
my
Kelly.
God, R. Kelly. What a douche.
Upside Down, Round and Round by Salt and Peppa.
Yep. So
Oh my gosh. Okay, I take it back. It was a great soundtrack.
goddamn right. But yeah, getting back to Hackers, one thing I do love about this movie is it does have, and Nick, you've put a couple down here. You've missed the best one though, but you put a couple one-liners down here. This movie has some great, and by great I mean terrible one-liners.
Hack the world.
Its one-liner game is on par to Big Trouble in Little China.
True. I'll give you that.
I
But
don't know. I feel like these are better.
it's Matthew Lillard who says, "Look at the pooper on that one."
Yeah. Spandex, am I right? It's a right, not a privilege.
I mean, just
Or it's a privilege, not a right.
yeah. So
I'm
there's
pretty
some.
sure I've actually said that too in the
Well,
past.
look at the pooper on that one.
No, the spandex. Spandex. It's a privilege, not a right. But it just shows, even though they probably a little bit older than their age that they were playing, it's kind of how you're in high school, that's your mentality. These kids weren't really trying to take down the man. They were, but they were for a good cause. They weren't bad kids.
They weren't trying to take down the man. They just kind of stumbled into it and then realized
Yeah.
they had to do something about
Yeah,
it.
it was kind of a
Exactly.
self-defense thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we move on to why you think this should be remade, Nick, I want to throw in a classic Pat hot take here, and that is that there's another movie from the 90s which I watched when I was in the 90s. So maybe this is my bias coming in, but have you ever seen the film Sneakers with Robert Redford and Dan Aykroyd?
I have not, but I saw your notes previous to this recording. So I looked it up, I caught the trailer, and I'm like, this is not even close to the same thing.
It's not the same thing because Hackers is bad and Sneakers is good. So they're completely different in that regard.
No. It's not even the same thing in the entire idea or the foundational thought behind the movie.
I agree with that, but I think they both deal with kind of the emerging threat of the internet and how people can weaponize it in kind of in the 90s. And a lot of films did this, right?
A good one is also The Net with Sandra Bullock, which was also a terrible movie, but I loved it.
I mean, if you're
and is
into
also going
ordering
to
pizza,
go on the list.
Yeah.
If you're into ordering pizza on the internet and putting a monitor in your fireplace, like, it's a great movie.
Putting a monitor in your fireplace?
It opens on, she's got a monitor in her fireplace with a,
No, she's got like a Yule log on her monitor.
which is actually in a fireplace.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Please don't make us watch that movie.
It's
It's actually not.
it's not
bad.
that bad,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
on the list now, so deal with
Okay,
it.
perfect. Johnny Mnemonic is also similar, based off the William Gibson novel. But Sneakers for me is what Sneakers does is it, instead of being kind of like this ragtag group of kids, it's on the other side of things. These are professional thieves, and they kind of get caught up in this thriller. And it's similar in that they have kind of this hacking encryption technology to can basically hack into anything, and they accidentally kind of get a hold of it, and now they're kind of like it's like they've stolen the world's biggest nuclear weapon, right? And listen, it's probably nostalgia speaking, and maybe Sneakers should go on my list of films to remake, but if you are listening to this and you like Hackers, or you've watched Hackers because you listen to this and you hate us for making you watch it, give Sneakers a go, because I love that film. The characters in it are great. Like the cast is an all-star cast. I mean, David Statham and Sidney Poitier are not even the top tier. They're like 5 or 6 people down the cast list. That's how stacked this cast is.
I saw Dan Aykroyd was in it.
Also, we didn't make you watch anything as
That's
a
true.
listener.
I volunteered for this.
No. As a listener, we're not forcing anybody to watch anything. It's of their own free will.
Now go watch these movies.
All right, so Nick, kind of give us the reason, like, the brass tacks, why you want a remake or a redo for this film.
Yeah, so this film could do with some modernizing, and not in the sense of bringing it to current day technology. I don't think it would hold up, but make the cast college age, put them in university. That's going to make a hell of a lot more sense for the whole love story plot. And also, it can really happen anywhere from early 90s all the way up into the early to mid 2000s. Let's say before the internet was available on a cell phone. Anywhere in that space, this movie can live. And I think if you push the envelope and bring it as close to that threshold as possible, you also kind of open up options for things like CG. Not because CG technology is advanced, but because you don't need to show crazy floaty equations in a weird space on
It's
a
like
monitor.
That meme
You could get away with doing something like The Matrix at that point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the timeline for that is really interesting, because early 2000s, like, we had those brick style phones, and you couldn't quite get the internet on that.
No.
But like a couple of years later, you could get the internet if you had like a flip phone or something like that.
Yeah, I'd say
remember those $1.99 megabyte charges that
God,
Verizon would charge you?
But I wouldn't even call that the internet. Like, broadband was just starting to become a thing. But the internet on a cell phone, you still had mobile pages. You had whatever website name.com to go to in order to get the like distilled down text only version. And even that I don't classify as internet on a cell phone.
Also, this film does not work without payphones.
This could work without payphones. It absolutely could. And that's why I'm saying that the accessibility of the internet via something like a smartphone and being able to tether or Wi-Fi hotspot or something like that wrecks this.
Yeah.
Being able to plug into someone's broadband connection, or having to go over to your friend's house or sneak into the computer lab on a university campus or something like that, could still fill the role of that limiting factor of using a payphone. Like, there are still things that you could use as plot devices to fulfill that same kind of restriction to make that part of it interesting. In fact, I think you could creatively structure that so that it would be more interesting than the way they did it in the original movie. Because we're literally talking about kids with laptops plugged into the handset of a payphone, that they used a micro cassette recorder to play the beeps and boops on the payphone to get them access to whatever line they needed. Phone freaking.
It's weird to think how far we've come from, like, I'm picking up I just got a new phone, and it's weird to think how quickly we came from where we were. Like, I'm this is a little bit morbid, but like, I remember when 9/11 happened, I was in high school, and they wheeled in the TVs, right? The big box TVs. There was no flat screens.
Yep, and they were strapped to this giant cart.
Correct. And then we, everyone went into like 1 or 2 classrooms that had them, and we all watched it happen there before they sent us home. Now, if 9/11 happened nowadays, we'd all just be staring at our phones in our classroom, right? And it's easy to forget that that was just about 20 years ago. That is not very long in historical terms, but in so far as like the last 2 decades, so far as consumer technology goes, that's the space we've come from is incredible, right? Like if you think about even 2008, right? Barack Obama was elected president in 2008. Even think about just from 2008, where social media was, just starting to ramp up. Facebook had been around for a couple years. Twitter was launching. From where we are there to now, it's incredible, that
Yeah.
level of technology. And there's nothing interesting about like taking out your smartphone and clicking a button and solving the issue, which is what a lot of hacking would be like realistically in those like chase scenes, right?
Right, exactly. And that's why that restriction for this movie needs to exist. And that's why I'm kind of saying you can't get to the point of having a smartphone with internet. You can't move that far forward. So the time period needs to be locked, but you can certainly modernize a lot of the other sections of it. And I think it could be a much more entertaining movie, and maybe it'll do for some kid today what it kind of did for me in inspiring an entire career, and something that I thought was at the very least, a cool hobby to get into.
I really enjoy the setting in college, like to move the setting into college.
I agree. Yeah.
I think that adds, like you said, more credence to the scene where they're at the scene where they're at the complex thing, and Kate is playing that game, and what's his face,
Oh, at
Dade
the
or
hacker
Dane,
hideout.
yeah,
That
like
all
that.
these high school kids' parents let them go to for some reason.
Yeah, that would make more sense if they were college students. I mean,
That's Wipeout, right? They're playing the game Wipeout in that scene.
I
The
don't
car is from
remember.
Wipeout. I know that. Like the little
I
spaceship they fly.
I it does look like that, but I think it's 100% rip off of that game, because
Okay.
the high scores thing that they did there with the dancing names up the staircase, like
Oh
I think
yeah.
that's a complete fabrication.
Yeah, because Wipeout would have been. I remember playing that. Was it on the 64, which would have been
SNES.
okay? I remember playing the 64 version.
Okay. I had a version on SNES, if I'm remembering correctly.
Okay, all right, that's fair.
I know you guys want to keep it, or maybe bring it up a little bit, age it a little bit, where they have more independence. But I like the aspect of that these are really kids playing with adult grounds, and you can tell because they're hacking a phone line to call their friends instead of hacking a phone line to steal money, or like one of the kids was just playing around and for fun shot money out of a bank with instead of stealing it. It just I like the innocent factor before it gets too serious.
The kids are naive, but the adults don't know how to interact or challenge these kids on it, right? There's that double interaction where like the kids know what they're doing, but they're naive, and the parents or that older generation is not computer literate. An example, an older person who shall not be named asked me where they could find the photos on their phone earlier today. So as an example, I love you, Dad.
So I actually wanted to talk about that a little bit as well. The gap there in knowledge. I love how this movie addresses that. So one of the characters, Joey, gets caught hacking into this mainframe. He doesn't know what it is. He's digging around. He starts downloading a file. On the other side of it, our main villain guy, the Plague, manages to track him and get his information over to the FBI. And the FBI break in, take this guy away, and his court-ordered sentencing is addiction counseling.
Yeah.
Because he's addicted to computers.
Right.
Like they didn't know how to handle it. This is a new thing for the older generations. Like, what the? I've got a kid that I don't know how to. Whatever.
Yeah.
Just send him to counseling. And that I feel like maybe it was just me and the whole private school hell that I had as a childhood, but it feels like anytime our parents' generation ran into something that they didn't know how to deal with or didn't know how to understand, it was ship them off to therapy, ship them off to counseling. I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, I'm not saying it is, but
But
therapy for
addiction
something you don't
counseling
like. Yeah, he
doesn't-
went to addiction counseling.
Yeah.
Now,
That's
I
not-
love how the movie played with that idea because he's in there standing in the middle of the circle. You got people going around saying, "Hi, I'm Johnny and I have an addiction." And, "Hi, I'm Allison and I have an addiction." And now it's Joey's turn. And he's like, "And I don't have an addiction. I'm here because the judge didn't know what to do with a kid that likes to play with computers."
And
As
he's
he's
smoking.
And
smoking,
he's smoking. You
Yeah.
can age this movie
Like-
in the
like a
90s 'cause
chimney.
he's smoking.
he is smoking like a
High
chimney,
schooler.
chugging coffee, like chugging his coffee. And
I thought that was a fun
he's
bit
like-
of irony right there.
he's chugging this coffee and he's like shaking. He's got the twitches from too much caffeine. And he says in one breath, "I don't have an addiction. I'm not addicted to computers. I don't know why I'm here. I'm not addicted. Where's the coffee? I need more coffee." And
But
I
I feel
just
like that
love
just-
that scene.
That represents the 90s too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And again, it's the older generation not understanding because the world is moving quickly, and I bet it'll happen to like us to a lesser degree. I don't understand people making a living dancing on TikTok,
Yeah.
but apparently it happens all the time. So there's going to be things like that, and as the world keeps moving faster and faster. All right, so let's jump in then to casting the film. Nick,
All right.
you got a list here. Why don't you go ahead and take us through your picks?
So I didn't go through everybody. There are some characters in the original film that I don't think contribute much, like Razor and Blade. They could be anyone that runs the hacker TV station.
Which I thought was a little strange.
It is, but it's like a nod to the MTV generation, right?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of what their thing was. It was glorified TRL. But did I just make another old person reference?
Yeah, I was just about to say, does anybody
Uh,
else besides us know what TRL is?
TRL still a thing?
I don't know.
No, I doubt it.
I mean, I don't even think MTV still plays music, much less a request show or a request type show.
Are you looking
Listen.
up what Total Request Live is?
TRL went for 10 years, okay? 1998 to 2008. I think some of our listeners are going to know what it is.
I doubt it.
It's a daily top 10 music video show.
And it
on-
didn't even
on
show the
MTV.
whole video.
It didn't. Well, they had to cram it into like a half hour, and you can't get 10 music videos. in
It was
that
an
quick.
hour long.
Was it an hour?
It was.
Never heard of it.
What?
Are you serious?
Are you serious?
Yep.
Wow. Well, by my calculations, 25% of our listeners aren't going to know what this is.
Yeah.
Anyways, so there's quite a few characters here that I didn't bother recasting. They could be fulfilled by just about anyone and contribute the same level. But starting with the main characters, Dade Murphy, who goes by the handles of Zero Cool and Crash Override,
Worst names ever.
played by Johnny Lee Miller. I picked Finn Wolfhard from Stranger Things, Mike from Stranger Things. I think he has that geeky, nerdy vibe. I mean, hell, that series opens up with them playing on D&D.
Mhm.
I think he could carry the role, especially if you look at the newer seasons and how that actor has matured. And I think he could fall into that role and not be too far off of what Dade Murphy is supposed to be, starting this Seattle kid who ends up on the wrong side of the law and then 7 years later has a vendetta or something to prove. I think he can pull that off.
I think that's an okay pick. I almost went with the Stranger Things route as well, because all those kids are in everything, right? And they're going to continue to be in everything.
Well, they're very popular.
Yeah.
And they're very good.
Yeah, generally speaking, I think the cast is pretty good. I went with Julian Dennison, which is the child from Deadpool 2, and he's also in the Wildebeests, Where to Find the Wildebeests movie. But most people would probably know him as the sassy Deadpool sidekick from Deadpool 2. And I just thought he was funny.
I was going to say, you're giving the character a little bit more sass.
Well, he's, first of all, he's a bigger kid, and I thought, let's represent some keyboard cowboys here. We sit in chairs a lot, and we eat a lot of food, and we drink a lot of Mountain Dew, and we're overweight. And he's also funny. He's
He
a
is
very
funny. Yep.
So I think he could, if you wanted to make it a little more comedic, which I would, then I could see him in that role. But I think Finn Wolfhard, first of all, who named this kid? But second of all, good pick.
You actually kind of touched on something there in how difficult it is to recast a movie with up and coming young actors. And one of the reasons I actually said let's push this back to the college years is because that opens up your casting a lot too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when I made these casting choices, I was trying to split the difference between someone who could fit inside of a high school role, but also kind of drift into a college role, not from the perspective strictly of someone who could fit into a college role and someone far past college that looks young enough to fit into a college role.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I agree with you. Like unless you do the thing which they did a lot in the 90s and 2000s, which is cast like 30 somethings or sometimes late 20 somethings as high schoolers.
Every single movie.
Yeah.
I thought there was something wrong with me.
Yeah, they do better with that nowadays, right? Where they'll cast like someone who's maybe 19 as like a 15-year-old, but he looks young or whatever.
Right. Yeah, they actually look the part.
So, but yeah, I think aging all of the characters up to university, you can then pick people who are older because they can have facial hair and that type of thing, and not look out of place, right?
Yeah, instead of going from essentially, high school age, you need actors that are or look, 14 to 18 years old. You kick it up to college and university years, you can have anyone that looks, regardless of their actual age, 18 to 25 years old. And it wouldn't be out of place to see one or two older people going back to college too. You kind of give yourself some leeway there.
Agreed.
So my pick was Josh Hutcherson. He played PETA in The Hunger Games and a couple of other places, but that's like the bigger one that he was known for. I don't know. I just saw the main character and like what his demeanor was and how he was treated, and that just sort of popped into my head. And it was like he seems very
he's very much an everyman. Is that what you're going for?
An everyman, but also kind of a doofus. Not saying that Josh Hutcherson can play a bit of a doofus, but like in The Hunger Games, I remember him being like on face value, he was kind of like that kid, he's kind of an idiot. But then when you started to get to know him a little bit, it's like, oh, okay, well, you're interesting. You have a brain behind that face. At least that's what the journey that I think Katniss went on in that particular movie and book.
He definitely has a face that sometimes I want to punch.
There you go. He qualifies.
Yeah, he qualifies.
But I mean,
but only some of the time.
But he can come off as smart, and I don't know. I saw that character and I immediately thought of that actor, and I was like, oh, okay, I think he'd be a good fit.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then before we move on, Amy, you had someone listed also, if you want
to. For Dade Murphy, I might be saying his name incorrectly, but I chose the actor Asa Butterfield. Am I saying that correctly?
Yep.
He was in Hugo. Look at how cute he was in there, but I'm choosing him obviously older. He was in this movie in Netflix, Choose or Die, and it was sort of a computer/horror movie. Very good, and he definitely looks older. It fit the part for me.
He was in the film version of Ender's Game, which is
Ender's Game.
Not great, but fine. Not as good as the book, but fine. I could also see him again. He's 25, so he's young enough. And I think he fits kind of the nerdy, like you could give him a nerdy look, you know what I mean? Like an underdog.
Okay. So my choice for Kate Libby, or Acid Burn, I was really tempted to say Millie Bobby Brown. But I didn't want this to turn into a Stranger Things recast. So I did some digging and I saw McKenna Grace, which we've actually picked in previous podcasts. And I think fits the bill, especially if you've seen Ghostbusters Afterlife. I think she could drop in. Just 1-for-1 replacement for Angelina Jolie in the original.
See, I saw Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Like think Scott Pilgrim. She's got that quiet nerdiness.
I don't think she could pull off the age though. Like now.
He's 38.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
But
Yeah.
here's the thing:
She
if we're going to
looks-
university, McKenna Grace is still 16.
Yeah. And if we're going to
True.
university, then I mean, then
True, but like university freshman, she could pull off being an 18-year-old.
That's true. Yeah.
Which is why I was saying, you get a ton of flexibility if you go to college university years.
My pick for Kate Libby was going to be Haley Steinfeld.
oh,
Field, and then I guess that is kind of in the loop of Ender Games because wasn't my male role in Ender Games too? But I
Yeah.
think
Haley Stenfield was in that.
Yeah, she was in the movie, wasn't she?
they were both
Oh.
pretty young.
Oh, she was in Bumblebee.
I think she'd look good with the short haircut.
Okay, we're not. Now you've gone too far. She was great in Hawkeye. I think she was.
Yeah,
pretty-
she was
good.
real good in that movie.
That's a good pick, and she's the perfect age for it too. So you win.
Well done.
You have picked an age appropriate university student. Congratulations.
How old is she?
26. Oh, she also plays. She voices Gwen Stacy in the Spider-Verse movies.
Oh, I didn't
Oh,
know that.
really?
Interesting.
Going on to Joey?
Joey was the one that got put into jail, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
The first one, the one who doesn't,
The
who
chain
can't figure out a
smoker.
name. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the one that went to
Rehab. Or
Rehab.
addicts therapy.
One thing that drove me crazy is when the feds came to take his computer, they took his monitor.
I know.
That has
Well-
nothing to do.
You don't know,
I
them
really
crazy
see
hackers.
feds though do that because they think
they
about it,
don't-
they don't know what they're doing.
Right.
They just took everything.
That it's funny you say that because right after that scene, you've got your typical politically motivated head of a department talking to one of the actual techs cleaning up the scene, and the tech saying, "Oh, this is great. We got a fully intact, uncorrupted hard drive. This and that," and the head of the FBI division is just like, "Listen, talk to me like I don't know what any of that means," and I just thought that was pretty great. And when you consider that the person that was cleaning the scene, the tech that went in there and pulled the equipment, knows, like, yeah, why is he pulling a monitor? But then again, them crazy hackers, they might, find a way to store that data in the monitor somehow.
I suppose it may have been an Apple, and if it was, then
Oh,
it may have
Jesus.
been all one unit.
It's in the computer.
It's in the computer. I still quote that
Me too.
way more than I should.
That's great.
What is this? A school for ants?
What is this? A hacker school for ants?
How are they supposed to get inside the building?
Oh my God, you guys. So Joey's like the ultimate try hard. He's trying so hard in the sense to fit into hacker culture, does not have a handle, is trying to prove himself, and he's the one that gets himself into trouble. He's the one that hacks into something he shouldn't have, that sets them down this road of the plague, trying to use these group of kid hackers as their scapegoats. I thought the scene where he was trying to come up with his handle, where we're introduced to the character, was hilarious. He was coming up with names such as the Master of Disaster,
Yeah.
Ultra Laser,
Ultra
Doctor Doom. They were all so bad. So bad. Like, none of them are great. I mean, come on, Zero Cool and Crash Override, like those are the quote unquote good ones.
I feel like in the 90s they're pretty cool.
My choice for Joey. Yeah, that was a tough one. I actually changed Joey's role into a more of a Josephina. I picked Aaliyah Shawkat from Arrested Development.
Is she
She's hilarious in that show.
is that maybe?
Yes.
She's a lot older than what I would think. Are you using a different character
She's 33.
in this
Is she
role?
now? Okay.
Yeah.
Older than I thought.
But you're
then.
using Arrested Development
I remember she was a teenager in 2003 when it first came out.
Wow.
Yeah. God, what a show.
It
Oh
was
my
a good
God.
show.
I'm so old now. That it was a very good show. I loved her character in that. I can't believe how old she is. I can't believe how old I am.
You fossil.
But I'm going to stick with that choice. I'm going to eat my words from earlier. I'm going to stick with that choice. I am going to lean into the college age, and you know what? It actually kind of fits now that I'm thinking about it. If you've got a 30-something going back to college, you would be that try hard to fit in.
I like how you changed the character into a female, just so there's more females.
I
in
do like
sort of
that
the
too.
group.
That wasn't honestly on purpose.
Well, I still like it.
I don't know why. My brain just did this thing where I'm like, who's a good jackass character for Joey? And I just like a few weeks ago started re-binging Arrested Development, and she popped into mind. I'm like, yeah, you know what? That could work here. Let's do that. But yeah,
I'm okay with that. Yeah.
I think it's a cool pick.
My pick for Joey was, I was going on the whole smart ass route too, was the kid from It, Dylan Grazer. If you look him up, he's got the dark hair. He's kind of he's the smart aleck one who kind of is a little OCD. He's been in a couple of things, but he kind of looks a little bit younger than what he is.
Okay, he's from Shazam as well.
He was in Shazam, but
he's 19.
he kind of gives me that whole.
You know what?
tweaker
He's got the type of face where like you could believe he was an idiot, right?
but is it punchable?
Yes.
I've only seen him in it. I haven't seen Shazam, but
I mean, are we going to meet Pat's qualifications or not?
I don't
These
know.
are important factors.
I don't think it's a punchable face.
So next I had Emmanuel Goldstein, or serial killer, as in Fruit Loops. Direct quote. I actually said let's keep Matthew Lillard.
I think so too. It's a good
Like, he doesn't have to be the school kid. He could just be the creepy homeless guy that follows everybody around. Like, I think he could fall right into that role. Even today.
You could age him up to be more of a elder statesman of the hacking, like because they had hackers in the 70s and 80s, right?
dude. He's 52.
But that's what I mean. Make him literally like the old hacker. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you could do that.
I can't think of someone that can fall into that role. I'm picturing him not just from Hackers, but like Half Baked, like
Scooby-Doo.
Scooby-Doo. Yeah, exactly. That kind of funny. Yeah.
I'm getting queasy over here, man.
But I think he's just too perfect for the role. And I think if you got creative with the casting choices and you moved it to college, university age, Pat, your idea of just having like the old hat at hacking coming in and telling these kids, he's perfect. And he really doesn't come into the movie in any meaningful way until the very end.
Right. He's just
He's
right.
just there.
He's almost unneeded, to be honest.
I mean, Community made it work with older people in a college setting. So,
true. And like, yeah, his whole thing is his speech at the end when they're hijacking the TV station, all the TV stations. But yeah, so I think we keep him as the old hat that just comes in for a cameo at the end to do the speech.
Yeah, we're allowed to keep one.
It'd be an excellent nod back to the original.
All right, so who's next? Are we doing Ramon is the Latino?
Yes,
I liked him.
The Phantom Freak.
Yeah, that's right. What a great name.
Yeah, so for Ramon, I picked Patrice Jones. If anybody's seen Lock and Key, he's the director of the lobster monster films.
I loved the comics, and we watched the first season, but we didn't keep up.
Okay.
After that, I mean, it was a fine show, but there's something magical about the comic book Lock and Key that I didn't expect the show to capture, and it definitely didn't.
Okay,
but he's good in it, and I think it's an okay show, but I think this is a great pick.
Excellent. I'm doing good, y'all. For once I'm doing good.
Yeah.
And then Eugene. Eugene, I had to go back and forth with a little bit.
I did too.
I eventually
Eugene is the plague, the
the
villain, correct?
plague.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're gonna say it, you gotta say it in crappy 80s, 90s announcer voice, man. So I went back and forth on this one, and I settled for someone that is creepy European accented Bond villain type. Sorry, Pat.
Wow.
I know, but that's just what comes to mind when I see this. Like, so I picked Ian. They cannot say his last name.
Looks like Ian de
Costicker?
Costicker, I guess.
Kostaka, yeah, sounds about right.
He's very Scottish. I've seen some behind the scenes where he's been interviewed, and oh my god, that accent. He's an Agents of Shield as the nerdy dude. But if you want a nerdy dude that has the flexibility to turn into a creepy Bond villain type, he could pull that off. And I saw that in Agents of Shield, and I think he'd be a good fit for the Plague.
I picked Gary Oldman.
I mean, there's no age limits on that character.
No,
so like,
and he could do the creepy. I mean, he has done the creepy villain before.
sure, but could he sell the tech side of it? Is what I would question. I don't know.
A man could do anything.
Listen,
I mean, he is a national treasure. I don't know if I'd put him as a hacker though, but
I love the man in every movie that I've seen him in, but I might not like him in Hackers.
Maybe not.
I don't know that he could sell being a tech genius.
I guess. Okay.
I don't think I would pick Gary Oldman, although he is a terrific actor, and I agree with you that I think theoretically he could be in anything. Like he was Winston Churchill.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he did a great job. So could he? Yes. Would I? Probably not. I've never heard of Ian. I've never seen Agents of Shield or anything else he's been in. So I will take your word for it that he could play kind of a villainous character.
You know, if you're thinking someone like Gary Oldman, and we're opening up the age range a little bit here, you could always pitch someone like Jim Carrey from the Number 23.
That's too creepy, cryptic, weirdo.
I don't know. Because like beginning of the movie, he's just Truman Show. End of the movie, he's like Psycho Killer.
Just
There's
actually call him Dr. Robotnik as his.
That's actually kind of why I said it, because he pulls off the smart nerdy type in Sonic, but like way over the top, like Ace Ventura style comedy. If you mellowed that and cut it with a little bit of Number 23.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
But anywho. And like I said before, Secret Service, the FBI, division leader, like all those roles, I think you can really cast anyone in there. They're not important enough. Really all of the authority figures are the lackeys for Eugene / the Plague's character.
There is one person though, and I wrote this down, that for some reason, like I saw her and I was like, that actor.
Okay.
Margot, who's the lady in the purple suit. So I picked Morel Enos.
Okay.
And she plays the main villain in Hannah, in the Amazon Prime show.
I haven't watched that, but I do want to.
Yeah, it's very good. It's very good. Holy crap, her spouse is Alan Ruck. He's the guy that played Ferris Bueller's friend.
Oh, okay.
He's also in Succession. Yeah. Before we move on, I do want to throw Wendell Pierce's hat into the ring. He's actually in the original movie. He's the FBI guy whose life they ruin when they're hacking. He's still young enough to do it. He's been in The Wire. He's in Jack Ryan, the Amazon show, which is fantastic. Season 3 coming out soon.
Oh yes, I remember him from that. That was great.
And he looks like he hasn't aged that much at all. He could probably just reprise his role.
That's true. He could just
Absolutely. I didn't even consider that. Honestly, like I said, I didn't really see. He was a little bit of a comedic outlet when they were hacking him and putting false criminal and felony charges on him and closing all of his bank accounts and stuff like that just to really mess with him. I saw him as a little bit of a comedic outlet for their little hack off, but other than that, he didn't matter as a character all that much. He didn't apply a lot of pressure to the hackers or Eugene. Like he just kind of existed in that space.
He was the Fed. There's not really much to say about him.
But I did want to say in the remake, that's something that should change. That role should apply pressure. There should be more than just Joey going off and getting messed up. There should be a little bit more pressure there. There should be, that whole this movie being classified as a thriller. There should be some thrill to it. And I think this is the character that would have to apply that pressure. So after thinking about that a little bit, yeah, Pat, I think he got it. I think he needs to come back. Wendell Pierce, he's got to come back, reprise his role, and especially after being buddies with Jack Ryan there and being the hard ass that he is in that show. Yeah. Like if he brings some of that over.
Have you seen The Wire?
I have not. Seen The Wire.
Well, you need to remedy that. It's one of the best TV shows ever made. But he's fantastic in
that. Would be Star Trek
well.
Next Generation. I'm sorry.
Non-negotiable. I said one of.
Okay.
Not the. Okay, so let's. We spent a decent amount of time on casting. Let's quickly, before we end the show, talk about a couple of the changes that we would want to make to the film. And again, Nick, this is your pick. Why don't you kind of lead us off?
We did just talk about a bit of that in Wendell Pierce. I think the FBI role in the movie needs to actually apply pressure to the characters. There needs to be a reason that this actually classifies as a thriller. Also, we talked about bringing the age up to college or university age. I think that not only gives a lot of flexibility in the casting, but also a lot of flexibility in what you can do with the plot.
There are some things that I would remove, just like I'd take out the weird hackers hideout scene. I feel like that's a little weird.
No, you need that.
I feel like them doing that contest thing. I was wondering about that. The contest that Kate and Dade were having.
Yes.
That, I mean, I know it was like implied that he won.
Yes.
But I kind of wanted to see a more concrete end to that. Like,
sure.
I thought it was weird they were just standing around phone booths doing, their work.
You're talking about a very abstract thing, the way this movie is portraying it. Nobody wants to stare at a command prompt or a terminal screen for 2 hours. So I like that the way they did it. I like that they showed you the results. Like you got some kids in a phone booth and now all of a sudden dude's credit card doesn't work while he's out to dinner. Or the sprinklers go off in the high school, or an ad was taken out for some how do I say that?
An ad was taken out in what they used to call the personals.
Yeah, the 1990s version of Grindr, an ad was posted for the FBI director's work phone number. Those pranks, those back and forth pranks, they brought a little bit of levity to the movie, while also showcasing the skills that these kids had, and also giving the FBI director a hard time and a reason to really amp up the pressure. And I think they could have leveraged that a little bit more into that pressure on the hackers.
So I have a question. What makes this movie bad?
Nothing. It's a great film.
It's under the changes to the film section in the notes, you may notice a section that says this movie's so bad that any remake I dream up would make so many changes that I would just end up with a new movie about hacking. And that's the kind of the way I feel about it. And now, obviously, when I wrote that, I was updating the movie to current day. We're still keeping it in like the late 90s, early 2000s. But I think kind of one of the main things of the movie is like the hacking is not particularly interesting to watch on screen. And that's not necessarily the filmmaker's fault, because like you say, Nick, it's not particularly interesting just inherently in real life. So I almost wonder whether the floppy disk that they make with the code on it becomes more of like a MacGuffin where like the FBI is trying to hunt down that specific disk because they know it has the virus on it. And you can make it kind of like, where the FBI thinks they've got the correct disk, but then that one's been wiped clean and someone else has it. You could do something like that with it where it's a little more of a thriller
Okay.
and a little more of a crime caper, and then you don't have to rely as much on those kind of hacking scenes. I also don't care. I know they're trying to build character. I don't care for the whole build up between Crash and Burn. I think I don't buy it at all. No wonder they got divorced after 4 years in real life. Am I right?
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, but
Um,
they actually got married, so clearly there was something there.
no, that's true. I'm just joking. Yeah. So yeah, maybe make it a little more of a kind of crime thriller instead of just relying so much on the hacking scenes where, like we said, they're obviously very silly. They've got the stuff floating through the air. Like the main room where they're hacking has got these pillars of just like electric light shooting up, which I guess are not CG. Apparently, Amy was watching a video earlier, and those are practical effects. All of the hacking scenes are practical. They built a giant
They
warehouse
built
with
it.
glass pillars in them. So there's no CGI. That's practical effects.
Like the equations flying around.
No,
No,
not that,
no.
but like the
No,
light towers
like in the
basically
hub
in
room.
the hub. Yeah.
Oh,
Like when the electricity's flying through and it looks like you're in a chip.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
it was a mix of CG and practical.
That doesn't hold up even if it was realistic. It just kind of came across as corny and dumb. And again, I'm speaking as someone who saw the film within the last few weeks for the first time. I'm sure it's different if you saw it in the 90s. So for me, I'd make so many changes as to almost not remake it. I'd almost make a new movie about hacking and just, you know what I mean? Just come up with it like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, see, they already did that, and that movie was called Swordfish.
Which I quite liked that movie back in the day. You know what I mean?
I never saw
but
that
honestly,
movie.
in my mind, Swordfish is a spiritual successor to this movie.
I agree. Yeah. Swordfish is not a great film by any means, but
John Travolta, man.
that's true.
Ugh.
It was one of those films that it was right after The Matrix, and so everyone wanted to do the bullet time.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to do the bullet time so much that they had a prologue where they did the bullet time, and then they flashed back, and then they did the bullet time again at the end.
Yeah. They do the bullet time in reverse and then forward again.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. One thing I would do in a remake or a rehash is, if you've ever seen the movie The Big Short, that is a movie that is incredibly well directed, but it's about something incredibly boring, which is the 2008 financial crash. And what they do is they will cut in and have people explain the financial concepts. And the reason I remember this is Margot Robbie was one of the people, and they have her in a bubble bath naked, and she's while she's in the bubble bath, she explains something about finances. And then I can't remember who they have. They have someone else at like a poker table or a blackjack table, and they're explaining the financial, what's happening financially using blackjack terminology. And I thought that was brilliant because I understood what was happening financially because I was interested in it. But people who didn't, you can still watch the movie The Big Short, and it's incredibly entertaining. And I think a hacking movie like that would benefit from something like that that's almost a little fourth wall breaking, if that makes sense. It doesn't have to break the fourth wall,
Okay.
but something where it's like this is what's happening, this is why it's so exciting, and that type of
Essentially
thing.
reduce the cost of entry for the knowledge of what is basic hacking, what is freaking, why is
Yes.
the phantom freaker, why is that name funny?
Right,
like
right.
that.
The Big Short is an incredibly well-paced film, an incredibly exciting film for what it's about. It's just a montage of scenes, scene after scene after scene, with all the different characters about how the financial crash came about, the people who saw it coming, and kind of the fallout of that. And I think that's a good template for films to take if they're trying to explain something to an audience that might not be super interested in diving deep into kind of the hacking side of things, if that makes sense.
Sure. And I think in the space of the 90s that hacking and computers were just a societal cultural phenomenon that it spoke to a lot of people. I mean, that's why you have other movies like The Net and Johnny Mnemonic and things like that, all inside of what, like a 5-year, 6-year period.
Yeah.
So I think back then it worked a little bit better, but like now the dust has settled on that. It does make a lot more sense to spoon feed, or at least treat it with kid gloves a little bit, to get that information out there and digestible by people that might not really care or not have the interest that most folks might have had back then.
Which is why I think they should leave some type of romantic element. I know Pat does not.
Oh no, I'm fine. I'm fine with it. They just spent way too much time on their romantic rivalry and them, and there's no like chemistry on screen. I know they're married. On screen, I didn't feel any chemistry at all.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
It was cold, and
There was literally no chemistry until the very end. They're walking through the
and
park.
even then, it was like
It felt a little forced.
Yeah.
Someone
But I
needed more
think-
rehearsal time.
I think if they were to push that, maybe one, well, no, because that kind of ruins the dynamic of the hackers and the back and forth. But if they introduced a character or a love interest for someone else that they could use as an exposition target, be like, oh no, the reason why this is so cool is because Crash
Not
Override's
standard.
doing this thing, and Acid Burn did this thing to do this back to Crash Override, and like you get that bit of exposition that ties the audience in.
They could still have like a hacker duel, and still be romantically involved. I just want to. I want it to feel more important and feel more real. You know what I mean?
Or we lean into that Joey character, and really kind of show that they don't really know what they're talking about. That they lucked into this situation because Eugene set it up for them to be the scapegoat. Lean into that a little bit more, so because now you can use Joey's character as that exposition target.
I like that a lot. Like maybe the kid wants to be a hacker, but is just an actual terrible hacker.
Exactly.
So they kind of
And
give him a little bit of
I like that a lot.
instruction.
And
Yeah,
that's Eugene leaves the door open. I mean, they make that inference in the movie, but it's not very clear. Like Margot, they have this whole boardroom scene about how, Margot, you need to change your password because the guy got in because your password was one of the 4 most commonly used passwords, blah blah blah. But don't do that nonsense. Actually make it so Eugene set this kid up, gave him an easy way in to make him the scapegoat.
You could even have Joey talk about how he has this like new online mentor, right? Who's teaching him all about hacking.
Yeah. And it's really just setting him up for the fall.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I like that a lot.
Yeah. That now we're going places.
Boom.
Let's do it. Let's
Scene.
somebody call Netflix.
Yeah, end scene. All right, so we're kind of running late here, so let's kind of move on to the final section. Would we remake the film or not? And Nick, you have to go last because it's your pick. I'll go first this time. No, I wouldn't remake it. Again, the reason being because if I did remake it, I would make so many changes as to not really be a remake in spirit of that film. So I would want to change a lot of things. So my vote is no, but again, only on the condition that really I would change so many things that it
Even with what we just talked about.
Yeah, that's a good add-in, but
Wow.
still no
Again,
for
how
me.
far
Cut me
is that
deep
going
just
to
now.
push it towards not the original?
Right. I would rather just watch Sneakers again.
Okay.
Amy, what do you think?
I appreciate the movie. I remember watching it when I was younger.
Oh no.
Would I remake it?
Don't do it to me.
I wouldn't remake it because I appreciate when it came out. I liked it when it came out. I don't think it would do well now remaking it. I don't think it would draw in any new audience. The changes that we would attempt to try to make, I don't think it would make it better or worse. But I still like the movie. So
Let me
I had
let me
fun
pitch you
looking
this.
back.
Let me pitch you this. What if we got that guy from the 80s that did all those crazy action movie announcements? What if we got that guy to do the trailer?
I'll take it.
No.
All right.
I miss that guy. Why don't they do that anymore?
Because
world
they've studied
where-
they've
In a
studied
world.
they've studied trailers and now they just make one trailer that hooks everyone all the time.
And then now they just use that sound.
Yeah.
Whatever that sound is.
Slow motion.
Yeah.
You know what it
scenes.
is.
All right,
In
lady.
a world where equations jump out of the screen at you.
Yep. I think I would remake it. Mostly because I think the idea is cool. Like the movie's got good bones. Just the execution was not great and it was too hokey. I think with a different setting, with a few tweaks to the story, like the one that you proposed at the end there, I think it would be good. I mean, again, I think it would also stand to be pushed a little bit further forward in time. So like closer towards 2000. But I think remaking it would probably be.
All right, Nick. So over to you. Would you remake it?
I absolutely would remake this, especially through our discussion tonight. I started with one idea in my mind about what I thought this was going to look like, what I had in mind, what we talked about really kind of developed that idea even further, solidified the idea of pushing the age and location into a college type setting, gives us a lot more versatility with the casting choices and what we just talked about in really making the villain a villain and not just some guy that's kind of a pain in the ass. Pushing that, adding a little bit of suspense with the FBI and authorities breathing down the neck of the hackers, and adding some exposition target, if you will, on the side of the hackers so that you can explain some of the things that might not make sense to the lay audience walking in and not being computer freaks, like myself. Like you shouldn't be expected to understand what something like phone freaking even is when you sit down in the movie theater. And I think if you take all of those changes and you put them all together, there's a good movie in there somewhere with a little bit further development. I think a remake is not just a good idea, but something that might actually do fairly well.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Original Remake Podcast. If you'd like to provide feedback or have a question, please email us at remake.cast@gmail.com. We'll be back with another episode in 2 weeks.